To begin, how to start.
Do you ever feel like you're going through the same cycle? Repeating the same thing over and over again? No? Just me then? What's the point of this video? This video is an attempt to explain my philosophy behind video game stunting, told through a layer cake story of interconnected pop culture references. What does a variety of music tracks, children's cartoons, the physical discipline of parkour, and a giant rock all have in common? Well, let's be honest, nothing really. But if you'll indulge me for the next
32 minutes,
I'd like to take you on a pretentious journey of discovery, and by the end of it, maybe we'll both be a little closer to understanding what the true meaning of all this is.
Okay, so I need to establish the themes.
In 1968, a rumour was started that the American stuntman Evel would jump over the Grand Canyon in a motorcycle. The rumour was started by none other than himself as a promotional tool, but he never actually got permission to attempt the stunt. Maybe that was for the best? It did open up opportunities though, and he followed up a few years later with the Snake River Canyon jump, in which a rocket-powered sky cycle was used to try and fly over the canyon. The stunt failed, and luckily Evel escaped with only minor physical injuries. The whole event was immortalised in the mid-90s electronica hip-hop mashup track, Original Stunt Master, by AIM, a British musician, DJ and producer.
If it weren't for a guy like me, people like them would have nothing to do.
The track features cut-up dialogue from a 1970s interview, Evel Talks with the Kids, as well as a sample of Bobby Womack's Point of No Return, which seems particularly apt given the subject. It's as if they intentionally picked the track so it would all connect together on a deeper level. A quarter of a decade later, after the Grand Canyon rumour was started, American rock group 4 Non Blondes released their track What's Up in 1993.
25 years and my life is still trying to get up that great big hill.
Which you might know better from the meme where He-Man from the 1980s cartoon series sings his own version of the song. Truly a work of art. If you never watched the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon, you certainly missed out. It wasn't just a thinly veiled advertisement for children's toys. No, it was so much more than that. The original animated series would finish every episode with a character moralising how best to live your life by explaining whatever lesson was to be learned from the story told that day.
Being the most powerful man in the universe isn't all that makes He-Man such a great hero. In today's story, He-Man used something even more powerful than his muscles to beat Skeletor. You know what it was? If you said his brain, you were right. And just like a muscle, your brain is something you can develop.
How cool is that?
We should practice thinking of safety all the time.
Let's be serious though, what child wants to get moralised on while sitting down for some entertainment? I mean, wouldn't we rather just sit around in a big group and ask a stuntman questions?
These wheels are real exciting and bear my name, Evel Knievel.
Anyway, what's any of this got to do with video game stunts? Another 80s cartoon from the same studios was Brave Star. Watching videotapes of this as a child, I would imagine myself as Brave Star running to school in the morning while singing the theme tune, imagining I had the eyes of a hawk, ears of the wolf. Brave Star. It also finished each episode with a moral lesson, which was a common hallmark of the Filmation series of the same era, such as the previously mentioned He-Man, as well as She-Ra, The Secret of Isis, no, not that one, and Ghostbusters. And no, we're not talking about these guys, the real Ghostbusters. We're talking about Filmation Ghostbusters. Like, whoever was in charge of the Filmation studios clearly saw children's TV as an opportunity to instill some good old-fashioned virtues, and let's be honest, where's the harm in that? It might be fairly simple stuff like don't steal and don't smoke, but it's just for kids, and I mean, it's not like it was just a way to distract from the fact that He-Man was a factory-produced, cheap production which reused cells, backgrounds, audio, and entire set pieces just to obscure that it was little more than a poorly disguised advertisement for children's toys. Again though, what's any of this got to do with stunting? Well, thankfully Filmation don't have anything to do with stunting, so there's no cut scene or pop-up shoving a moral story down your throat when you've successfully landed something. But that's why I'm here, so open wide, because I'm about to shove a massive down your throat. Not long after Four Non Blondes released their existential ballad, What's Up, in 1993, there was a TV show in the UK screened on Channel 4 late on a Friday night. It was called Passengers, with the title, intro music, and probably its whole attitude and outlook coming from the Iggy Pop song of the same name. Passengers was a youth reporting style programme sponsored by Pepsi, with features on musicians, actors, artists, creators, collaborators, and everyone and everything in between. The common thread appeared to be anything new and up and coming, slightly underground, unknown, or pushing the boundaries within youth culture. There were features on American rapper Christopher Wallace, the Notorious B.I.G., and Scottish actor Ewan McGregor earlier in their careers. There were video diaries by Massive Attack, the Bristol trip-hop electronica band, as they produced the track Karma Coma from their Protection album. Young people surfing the L train in Chicago like absolute maniacs with no regard for their own personal safety. It's something that people still do today, and don't get me wrong, I'm something of an adrenaline junkie myself, but...
You know, I'm something...
Adrenaline junkie.
Myself.
But don't do that. There was a feature on Banksy, the now practically infamous and anonymous political graffiti artist whose works are often so valued or hated that they get damaged, vandalised, or in some cases completely removed. No, seriously, people have stolen entire walls the Banksy graffiti art has appeared on. One episode was punctuated with documentary-style footage following Goldie, the UK drum and bass pioneer. Another featured a video diary of a young man from Mostar following the 1993 Croat-Bosniak War. But it wouldn't have been a worthy passenger story without a twist. He and his father before him were involved in the tradition of tombstoning, also known as cliff jumping, or in this case, bridge jumping, in which they would jump off an obscene height into the river below. Remember, this was screened way back in the mid-90s, before any of these people were famous, and long before the politics of division appeared as obvious as it does today. All this stuff seemed completely new at the time. It was, and it was all just so cool and impressive. A weekly show of mini documentaries aimed directly at young people, and it made a lasting impression on the entire generation within the UK. That whole underground left field kind of vibe reminds me of Style Wars from 1983, the legendary American hip-hop culture documentary focusing mostly on graffiti that promoted the pursuit as an art form rather than idle vandalism.
Is that an art form? I don't know, I'm not an art critic. but I can sure as hell tell you that that's a crime.
In a circular kind of recycling of content, 15 years later in the late 90s, dialogue from the film was sampled by AIM in their track, Let the Funk Ride.
All these other people who don't write, they're excluded. I don't care about them. It's for me and other graffiti writers that we can read it. Check it out, y'all.
Passengers was also the UK's first introduction to parkour, with Sebastian Foucan and the Yamakaze appearing in one episode. It was a real-life group of traceurs, practitioners of parkour, performing the unbelievable on TV long before its current status in popular culture. I remember watching and imagining if I too could see the world like them, move as they did, be as strong as they were. But back in the 90s, I promptly forgot about it after the weekend when life and all the problems that come with it returned to the forefront of my attention. It planted a seed though, one that would take many years and much effort before it would bear any fruit. Again though, what does any of this have to do with video game stunts? Don't worry, give it time. Everything's connected. Modern life can be challenging. We're all just trying to survive and hopefully thrive. Yet many people are routinely denied the basic foundations to do so. How does one adapt to such challenges? How do we navigate the often Kafkaesque modern world? What skills can we develop to help us build or rebuild those strong foundations? What tools can we use to overcome such obstacles? Good guidance and practice are important ingredients.
We practice again and again by rehearsing again and again. Well, that's what you have to do. You practice over and over again. Practice again and again.
Practice is at the heart of any improvement. Our brains have a quality called plasticity, and this allows us to learn, adapt, and ultimately overcome.
I've been wanting one of these for quite a while.
It used to be thought that neuroplasticity was something only held by youth. However, over the years, research has shown that neuroplasticity is something that exists throughout life and can be tapped into at any point. But just like training the body, it requires a correct environment and stimulus to have the desired effect. What does this have to do with stunting? Well, I think a lot of the tools to solve and overcome problems in the modern world can be refined and honed within the safety and control of one's free time. What do I mean by this? Hobbies, pastimes, personal interests, games, crafts, pursuits, and activities can all play a part in developing life skills, not just within children, but adults too. It's not just the crossover and transferability of a skill, but learning something new is powerful for the mind as it creates new connections and promotes growth, which again can occur late into adulthood despite previously held beliefs. But let's get real. That sounds like a lot of hard work, spending your free time practicing and learning stuff. Who actually wants to do that?
Just what is it that you want to do?
Well, stunting in games can certainly be seen as a waste of time. What is there to gain? To learn? Spending hundreds of hours playing video games to complete self-imposed arbitrary goals for no outcome or reward seems like a fruitless activity. People usually get into stunting after seeing others do it and being impressed. I guess people want to emulate that impressive status. Stunting isn't really big enough to guarantee your skills will get seen or even acknowledged, so why do people do it? Maybe it's all just peacocking, showing off, ego. But whatever it is that starts you off, the journey will no doubt reveal much, much more.
Well, we want to be free. We want to be free to do what we want to do. And we want to have a good time.
Jump London was a documentary screened in early September 2003 on Channel 4 in the UK. It followed a group of freerunners, or traceurs, from France who visited London to share the story of their discipline and explain its philosophy. Led by none other than Sebastian Foucan, the group visited London to run, skip and jump across many of the most notable landmarks of the famous city. while director Mike Christie pulled everything together in an hour-long enthralling piece of entertainment. The documentary stunned the UK viewing audience, kickstarting a movement that spawned an entirely new subsection of physical recreation, freerunning, or parkour, which are distinctly different, but that's not what's important here. What's important was parkour had for the second time been introduced to the UK, and this time, crucially, the public was ready for it. Immediately after the screening, people from across the UK began to experiment and practice the movements they had seen in the documentary. Like the new practitioners jumping towards higher ground, parkour was on an upward trajectory. A little over a year later, in January 2005, and the sequel, Jump Britain, was screened in the UK, again on Channel 4. This time, instead of following the French practitioners around London, it followed them around the whole of the UK, meeting and training with a selection of the huge number of people that had decided to take up the activity since watching Jump London 16 months earlier. Parkour tapped into a generation of people feeling constrained by urban inner city life and its environment, who saw freerunning as a way of looking beyond its usual boundary defining architecture and saw it as an opportunity to express themselves. The explosion of interest was huge and largely fueled by the internet, allowing people to connect, discuss and share techniques, ideas and media. It had been almost a decade since Sébastien Foucan first graced British television, performing incredible stunts on the Friday night Channel 4 youth reporting programme, Passengers. Yet it wasn't until seeing the young people featured in Jump Britain and what they could do that I started practicing parkour. Before that, it just looked like some awesome fantasy. What can I say? Some seeds take a little longer to germinate than others. Video game stunts were a newly developing niche at around the same time that parkour was becoming popular. I'd bought Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on its launch day at the end of October 2004, several months prior to the release of Jump Britain. After completing the storyline and eventually getting stuck, unable to complete all the collectible lists, I resorted to searching the interweb for answers. Along with printing maps to help discover all the horseshoes, pearls and graffiti locations, I discovered guides describing how to access the Ghost World. Ghost World, or Heaven, was another plane of existence outside the main map in which all the interiors were located. This was especially useful if you wanted to obtain any of the rare tattoos available at the parlour which had been removed from the game prior to release. It honestly felt kinda cool to have exclusive tattoos that nobody else knew existed. Well, for about 3 seconds. During my searches, I once came across a stunt. Turtle Dick's bump on the San Fierro Bridge from As One Again by TMS. Just like watching Sébastien Foucan and the Yamakaze on Passengers in the 90s, the stunt completely blew me away, and just like back then, I promptly forgot about it afterwards. Anyway, who wouldn't immediately forget about some bike stunt when you just discovered access to a bunch of sick tats? Seriously though, I loved the game, but my interest in stunts were primarily focused on the real world. I would usually play San Andreas on Saturday mornings before heading out to train parkour in the afternoon. I mean, they're quite similar really, stunting and parkour. Apart from the obvious difference in activity levels, a lot of the skills developed over time are common to both parkour and stunting. Many of the concepts used to develop abilities in parkour can be directly applied to other areas in life. Dedication, discipline, risk management, incremental improvement, bravery, problem solving, and one of the fundamentals, practice.
Practice is the most important thing. Without practice, you can't do anything.
Sébastien Foucan once said,
"This is why the repetition is very important."
That's all practice is. You can vary the quality of your practice, but at its heart, it's simply repeating something until you get better. The skill set required to stunt is extensive, developed over time and in constant state of flux. possibly the most important quality you must have is commitment. You'll never hit any of the stunts or achieve any of the goals you desire without commitment. Choose the path leading to your desired goal and start moving towards it. Your goals are unlikely to be realised overnight, but without committing to the path and walking it, you'll never have the chance of reaching them. Once you commit to the task at hand, it all becomes a game of perseverance. What are the limitations of your capacity to practice? How long can you persevere in repeating the same actions? Have you heard the tale of Sisyphus?
What is this? Scrap a sassafras, a Sisyphus.
He's the Greek god who defied death and was subsequently punished to push a boulder up a hill every day, only for it to roll down each night. Sisyphus was condemned to wake every single day and repeat this fruitless labour for all eternity.
Prince of Eternia.
This story is sometimes thought to be a representation of solar theory, with Sisyphus pushing the disk of the sun that rises high every day from the east and then sinks towards the west. Other scholars regard him as a personification of waves rising and falling. Friedrich Welcker suggested that he symbolises the vain struggle of man in the pursuit of knowledge. And 1st century BC Epicurean philosopher Lucretius interprets the myth of Sisyphus as personifying politicians aspiring for political office who are constantly defeated, with the quest for power in itself an empty thing. While all of this is interesting, there's another interpretation that may be a more suitable lens for which to help with the kind of challenges we face today. Albert Camus was a French author from the mid-20th century who wrote and published The Myth of Sisyphus in 1942.
Seen fashion a cap from a page of Camus.
If he were alive today, it would have been a 5-hour video essay, but as the format didn't exist back then, he wrote a 5-chapter, 50,000 word essay on the subject instead. There's a hell of a lot to digest, and if any contemplation of philosophy happens to be your cup of tea, then it's certainly going to hit the spot. To cut a long story short, Albert Camus saw Sisyphus as personifying the absurdity of human life, concluding, one must imagine Sisyphus happy, as the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. How does that apply to us? What does that even mean? In the language of today, it might go something like, love the grind. How do you learn to love the grind? Practice. It's a matter of perspective. Do you look at your day's work rolling back down the hill in dismay? Or do you return to rest each night feeling satisfied with your work and looking forward to the opportunity to wake and do it all over again? You'll likely experience both, but what do you focus on?
A Sisyphusian tale for the ages.
Stunting could be seen as an absurdist Sisyphean feat in some cases. Most cases. My stunting started back in 2012 with simple but unique skydive stunts set to the special herbs beats of MF Doom.
As the life cycle goes on.
Each video in the series was introduced with an animation painstakingly created frame by frame, paralleling the efforts of stunting itself. Since then, I've invested considerable time into stunting, with various results, good and bad. There are many people that have persevered with stunts over many hours, days, weeks and months, edging ever closer only to fail, just like Sisyphus watching that rock tumble back down the hill, or in the case of stunting, watch the car roll off the building. What's the point of continuing to push? If you're committed and persevere, you at least give yourself a chance of success. And with commitment and perseverance, even the worst stunters can develop over time. And that can be said for anything, really. Just look at me. But even if you reach the top, and even if you land a stunt, what's next? Another stunt? Another day pushing the rock?
Give us time to work it out.
Yuri Norstein and his wife Francesca Yarbasova are critically acclaimed Russian animators. After working for Soyuz Multfilm, the main Soviet animation studio, for over a decade, a turbulent end resulted in them being fired and setting up their own animation studio at their home to continue the unfinished project, an adaptation of Nikolai Gogol's The Overcoat. A tragic tale of a poverty-stricken man acquiring an overcoat, giving rise to previously unattainable opportunities, only for it to be stolen and all the resulting benefits it brought to being lost as well. Norstein has said that he considers The Overcoat to be an important work of literature for him personally, and believes the only way that a story can be truthfully told is for the maker to suffer hardship in a similar way to the protagonist. This has resulted in him constantly refusing to use modern technology to aid the project or accepting help from studios offering assistance to complete it. Unlike the Filmation studios that made He-Man and Bravestar, which would reuse cells and scenes, repurposing them for different shots in order to speed up production time and reduce costs, Yuri Norstein and Francesca Yarbasova used vastly more time-consuming processes. They were invested. They were committed. On several occasions, Yuri has developed a different approach for the multi-layered glass panel stop-motion technique he uses, and production has had to start again from the very beginning. As such, despite having started the project in 1981, Yuri Norstein and his wife Francesca Yarbasova, born in 1941 and 42 respectively, have still not completed the film as of late 2021. Given the amount of work yet still to be completed and the glacial process of production and the age of these two legends of animation, there's a possibility one or the other may pass away before the project is ever finished. Although Evel Knievel never completed the Snake River Canyon jump himself back in the 70s, his son Kelly did work with stuntman Eddie Braun to recreate the attempt using a replica of the Sky Cycle. Braun's jump took place on September the 16th, 2016 and was completed successfully, almost 40 years since the first try, since the first seed of an idea was planted by Evel Knievel in his death-defying failed attempt. I nearly died on my first day doing parkour. Like, no exaggeration. I was so bad and stupid. At least I wasn't being sedentary though. It was a dumb mistake on a simple move being done way too high up for somebody new to the practice. A complete naivety to the dangers almost got me killed or severely injured. Thankfully, there was somebody there to save the day and stop me from falling, but it was one of the most stupid things I've ever done, and possibly just as stupid as any of those kids train surfing. Eyes of a hawk, brains of an amoeba. More than a decade and a half later, and it could be easy to judge all that time spent as being wasted. All the blood, sweat and tears. What good did learning to jump over walls do? What life event did I ever need to be physically ready for that required training on rooftops?
What goes up must come down.
Maybe none if you look at life as a one-dimensional puzzle, but the skill set is transferable and that's the point. Life is unpredictable and keeping the positive habits that allow us to thrive is something that needs to be practiced. Forever. Taking control in a complex world where controlling outcomes is often out with our grasp. Parkour at its very basic level is a method of problem solving and practicing life skills within a safe and predictable environment. The only dangers are the ones that you impose on yourself. For that reason alone, I think it's a worthwhile pursuit. Add in the spectacularly entertaining feats performed by traceurs and what's not to like? The same could be said for many activities. Stunting, at its very basic level, is a method of problem solving and practicing life skills within a safe and predictable environment. The only dangers are the ones you impose on yourself. For that reason alone, I think it's a worthwhile pursuit. Add in the spectacularly entertaining feats performed by gamers, and what's not to like? Sitting around being sedentary? Sitting and writing at its very basic level is a method of problem solving and practicing life skills within a safe and predictable hobbies, pastimes, personal interests, games, crafts, pursuits and activities are, at a very basic level, all just methods of problem solving and practicing life skills within a safe and predictable environment. The only dangers are the ones you impose on yourself.
The traits you display in life are the same traits you display in free-running. The doubts and fears you have in everyday life are the same you find in the discipline.
In 1993, American rock group Four Non Blondes released their track What's Up. A quarter of a decade later, in 2018, Just Cause 4 was released. Practically all the stunts in this video have been from that game. I didn't start stunting until adulthood, many years after first watching a bike land on San Fierro Bridge. More than a decade since then and thousands of hours wasted stunting. It's completely pointless, but what isn't? Push your boundaries. Keep things in balance. Even Sisyphus sleeps. Focus on the positive aspects and imagine Sisyphus happy, because although we may all be condemned to forever repeat, in time and with persistence, things can slowly change. What did we learn today? I don't know. Like, if I could have summed all this up in a soundbite, there wouldn't be any reason for the video. What was the point of this video? Don't ask me. Why are you making me do all the work? Make your own meaning. Do you ever feel like you're going through the same cycle? Repeating the same thing over and over again? Trying to make a video with the same message, but just with a slightly different take?
Attempting to create a story where nothing much happens, where people struggle and nothing is resolved. More a reflection of the real world.
No? Just me then? Maybe you should watch this again, you know, get on the same page. Give me some views and watch time while you're at it. These videos take ages to produce. When am I supposed to find time to stunt? I've got different cycles I want to repeat. What was the point of all this again?
They've learned. If at first you don't succeed, try again.
You're right, Shaman. People never know what marvelous things they can do until they try. And I hope you remember that. Yes, I mean you.
You are what you love.